What's up guys, it's Nikki Lynn with A Farmhouse Full Crochet, and today I'm going to be sharing a tutorial with you on how to do slip stitch ribbing. So this is my go-to ribbing for the bottom up beanie, and I'll show you how it looks. This is one of my favorite hat patterns. This is called the Spruce Slouch, and it is available in my Etsy shop, and it utilizes the slip stitch ribbing. It is absolutely my favorite ribbing to do for bottom up beanies, which this is. So I'm going to show you how to do that flawlessly. So this is the slip stitch ribbing that I was talking about. It has a lot of stretch to it. It recoils really easy. If you look nice and close to it, it looks very much like a knit one, purl one knit ribbing, but this is actually crochet. And what's better is that it doesn't roll like knit ribbing. So I'm going to show you how to get this look for bottom up beanies or any other ribbing project that you need a nice tight rib with some stretch and recoil to it. It's a little tricky at first, but once you're going on it, it's something that you're going to really love knowing how to do. I'm going to zoom the camera in just a little bit to give you guys a better view of what's going on. You're going to start your work with just a simple slip knot. So this is just worsted weight yarn and a eye hook, but you could use anything that you want. So start with a slip knot, and you're going to chain the number of stitches. So this is a 10 stitch ribbing, which means there's 10 slip stitches across here. So whatever you want that number to be, you're going to add 1 to it because you're going to skip one of those chains. So I'm going to do a 5 slip stitch ribbing for the demonstration purposes. So I'm going to chain 6. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So these are our 6 chains. We're always going to skip this first chain from the hook and start in the second chain from the hook. So starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to work a slip stitch. And a slip stitch is simply that you insert into a stitch, pull the loop through the stitch, and then pull it through the loop on the hook. You're going to work that all the way to the end, and since you skipped that first chain, you're going to only have 5 slip stitches, not 6. Once you get to the end of your row, you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work. Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated and a little bit hard to see when you're looking for stitches. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more and show you what I'm talking about with a tapestry needle. So looking at the work here, you could actually assume that this was your stitch V. This one right here and this one right here. But this is not your, these are not your stitches. These are not your slip stitches. That's the back bar of your slip stitch and the front loop, but not the front and the back loop. If you tilt your work, rotate your work towards you just a little bit, you actually see the true stitches or the true stitch tops. And the true stitch tops are right here. So you have your chain right here, and then you have your first stitch, front loop, first stitch, back loop, front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop, and front loop and back loop. So what we actually want to be working with when we're looking at it is not these stitches here, but you tilt your work backward, and those are the tops of your stitches right there. So we're going to be working in back loop only in this slip stitch, which is right here is your first back loop only of the stitch. Remember, this is your chain and you don't want to work into that one. So you just insert your hook back in there. You've got to rotate your work back just a little bit. So you're going to be going into the back loop of that one, which is right there. And then you're going to pull a slip stitch. And you're going to do that all the way across. Remember, you got to turn your work backwards a little bit. So you have to kind of rotate your fingers backwards to grab those. You're going to grab the back loop only, which is right there, and work a slip stitch. Back loop only, slip stitch. That's number 4. And then your last one of the row is always a little bit hard to find, but that's the back loop there. So make sure you don't drop stitches. It's very easy to drop stitches when you're unfamiliar with a slip stitch in the back loop only ribbing. So you chain your 1 and you're going to turn. And again, you're going to want to think that these are the face of your stitches when actually you got to rotate it back, and there they are. They become visible. So those are not the face of your stitches. That's your front loop, back loop. And again, we're going to be working in back loop only. So we're going to rotate the work back. Remember to skip our chain here so we don't go into that one. Back loop only of this first stitch and pull a slip stitch. And then again, back loop only, work a slip stitch, and do that all the way across until the very end. And then there you go. That is the beginning of your slip stitch ribbing. Now, bringing it back to what I've already finished here, I want you to see that these stitches and rows are super tight and sometimes can get hard to count your rows. Because when I'm doing this, I don't know about you, but I just crochet, 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 and I don't always count rows every time I'm turning because I'm turning every 10 stitches. So I'll do a little bit and then I'll go back and count. And the way you're gonna wanna count is you're gonna actually wanna pull these apart. And if you notice, let me zoom back in just a little bit. You have ridges and valleys when you stretch this out. And the valleys, you can see when you stretch, are right here. So this is a ridge, this is a valley, this is a ridge, this is a valley. And you can kind of see it better this direction if you go down there. So this would be a ridge, and in between these two ridges would be a valley. And if you pull it apart, you can kind of see it better. See the valley kind of expose itself there? So ridge, valley, ridge, valley. That's how you're gonna count your rows. Basically, this is a row and the valley's a row. The ridge is a row, the valley is a row. So what I usually do is just count by twos on my ridges because they're easy to see when it's not stretched. So I'd simply go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and so on. And that is how I count my rows. I'm going to hold the last row that I worked facing me, so my body's right here, and I'm going to place the foundation chain, which is right here, on top of that. And I'm gonna work the same way I worked every other row, except when I go through the back loop only, I'm also gonna pick up the coordinating foundation chain space, and I'm gonna work a slip stitch. So work through the back loop only, and then you're gonna go through the foundation chain that matches up with it, the back loop only, and work your way up the row. All right, once you have gotten all of your slip stitches, this is what it's going to look like. You're gonna have a little bit of a seam, but not too bad of a one. You're gonna just have a slightly more raised ridge right there, if you can kind of see it. And then on the back side, you're gonna have an extra valley. Now you can turn it inside out this way so the valley is your seam, whichever you prefer. I feel like once there's some stretch on this, that extra little ridge is not that easy to see. It's easy to see now, but that's because there's no stretch on the ribbing. But if you want, you can turn it inside out and work with this being your outside. But I don't, I usually keep it like this. So that is what's actually seen. So now how do we work in the round around here to form a hat? So each pattern is going to be a little bit different, but you tend to want less single crochets or whatever stitch you're putting in this way as you do rows. You do not want a stitch for each row, or else you will have a massive increase because these rows are so narrow. So what I usually like to do is I usually like to crochet a couple and then skip one or two. And that all depends on your pattern, but we're gonna just go crochet 3, skip 1 to show you how that's done. So I'm going to zoom you in just a little bit. And basically each row, remember the valleys and the ridges are the rows. So you have a row here and then a row here, row here, row here, row here. So I'm gonna go into the first row. I'm sorry, I'm going to chain up one first. I'm going to go into the first row and work a single crochet. It depends on what the pattern states. I'm just using single crochets. Then I'm going to go into the next one, which is this ridge row. Now you can go directly into the ridge, or you can go into the loop right on to the left of the ridge, which is what I'm going to do because it's a little bit easier. And then I'm going to work in the next valley, and that's going to be my 3. Now I'll skip this ridge and work into that next valley, and that skips a stitch. And then you're gonna do this all the way across. You're gonna work into the ridge. Like I said before, I'm working into the loop right to the left of that ridge just because it's easier. And then again, the valley, and then the ridge, and then I'll skip one. And you're gonna work your way all the way around your hat depending on what your pattern says, and then you will have a row of single crochet or double crochet or half double crochet, whatever your pattern calls for, all the way around your hat. So this is what you're gonna end up with. You're gonna have a nice stretchable ribbed bottom to your hat, and then you're going to be able to work your stitches on up, working from the bottom to the top in your bottom up beanie. Again, this pattern is the spruce slouch, and it's available in my Etsy shop, and I will link that down below for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.